Now, sporting fans are certainly in for a bumper weekend of action. Football fans have some marquee fixtures to look forward to. This evening, Gavin Durban City are hoping to put over Kaizer Chiefs, the former team that he coached. And tomorrow out in the Betway Premiership, it's a top of the table clash as Mamelodi Sundowns will be taking on Orlando Pirates in the nation's capital. And cricket action, all eyes will be on the Proteas Women when they take on India in the final of the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup on Sunday. Now, to look at these and other sporting events, we've roped in the respected commentator, analyst and award-winning journalist, Khanyiso Tshwaku. Khanyiso, very good morning to you. Let's just get straight into it. Let's start off talking about the Proteas as well as India in terms of Sunday's final. Coming into the tournament, do you think this was what was expected in terms of who the final two teams would be? And also just looking at Coach Mandla, many said he took over a team that had showed a lot of potential and showed that they could get to the final and be dominant in their performances.
Far from it. Good morning, V. Good morning to the viewers. Far from it. Everyone expected Australia to be in the final. And it's just a case of who was going to play Australia in the final. And again, true to the nature of knockout sports, that sometimes these things happen where teams play the absolute best on a given day. And you look at how South Africa and India approached their different approaches to their knockout games. They were absolutely magnificent. Look, I think Michael just had added a hard edge to this Proteas women's side. They've always been good. I mean, it is their third consecutive final. They've been to 250 over semi-finals in 2017 and in 2022. But now they moved on to getting into a final. And look, like anything can happen. I mean, India, they took down Australia in a world record chase, but it needs to be done again on Sunday. And initially, I personally thought that facing Australia would be an easy and hard task because you're playing against a side that's used to being at this occasion. However, though, it's two teams. India have been to a final before, but they've never won the tournament. South Africa have never been to a final before, and they've never won a tournament. So it's going to be a very, very interesting case of sides in the maiden, not in the maiden final appearances for India's sake, but for South Africa's sake. And they've just got everything to lose and everything to gain from these sides. But they played probably the perfect semi-finals. And I think the fact that now it's two teams who've got a tournament to win for the first time, they need to replay a final again. So they will be in a position where they can actually play their best cricket and just focus on the moment instead of focusing on the opposition.
Certainly, we just love how the underdogs flipped the script and gave us this, because we've been saying as South Africa, it's no DNA, just RSA for the longest time. Let's shift our conversation into talking rugby, because we look at the Springbok hooker Jan-Hendrik Wessels having failed his appeal. What do you make of the outcome of that, especially since there's no clear evidence of this alleged grabbing of genitals of an opponent, just a reduction now of the suspension to one less game? But what do you make of 9 weeks suspension? Is that not perhaps a bit too harsh, given that there is no clear evidence of what they allege he did?
It is very harsh. I know that they use the balance of probabilities to arrive at this very harsh ban, but at the end of the day, when a player is accused of such a heinous rugby crime, I think at the end of the day, there needs to be evidence. You can't walk around, you can't use the term of the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. There needs to be a point where a player says, yes, this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. Is there proof that this happened? Is the video evidence that this happened? Clearly, in this case, it wasn't. The bigger challenge is there's always been a sense that there's been a bit of an injustice when it comes to South African players and judicial matters when it comes to the URC, and also when it comes to the officiating on the field, where South African players have generally been punished for offences that the Northern Hemisphere players tend to get away with. So it's a dangerous precedent that's been set by the URC. And I mean, no sporting body will walk back on an appeal that's been set by its own judicial officers. So with the Yanende did it or not, it's hanging in the air because there's no clear evidence, and there's been a player who has been prosecuted based on no clear evidence. So we need to see how this will pan out in the future, where if a South African player comes with a complaint and says a particular player from a Northern Hemisphere team has done ABC, will they be able to use that very same precedent that they've used on Jan Hendrik vessels? That will remain to be seen.
All right, Khanyiso, that is very interesting. Let's move into football now. I want to start with Coach Desiree Ellis. Just quickly give me your thoughts on her now putting pen to paper and extending her contract with SAFA by another 4 years.
Look, good move. Also, I suspect that a lot of it had to do with the qualification and the fact that it may have hung at stake after the draw in Kinshasa, and then a very difficult performance from Banyana on Tuesday in Dobsonville. Look, also you want to get those uncertainties out of the way ahead of big games. So one would have hoped that was done before the game, because things like those can unsettle players. But personally, I would love to think that hopefully now this probably would be Desiree's last term, because we also need a team to grow out of a particular coach's shell and actually understand that there are coaches out there. And I think, look, Desiree's done a magnificent job as Banyana coach, but also it's very important that a team needs to grow and an organization needs to be able to grow new coaches and actually have a succession plan in place when Desiree does eventually move on. But however, though, Banyana do still have a shot at the WAFCON, they have a shot at the World Cup. So I think hopefully the National Federation will have a succession plan in place for when Desiree eventually has to move on.
Indeed, and we must also note that we also got confirmation during this week that Sasol contract with SAFA has also been renewed, because that was also something that was hindering and just like delaying the progression of women's football in South Africa. But as I begin to wrap up with you, I do want to touch on, we saw reports coming through yesterday, allegedly Orlando Pirates having filed a complaint with CAF just regarding Saint Eloy Lepopo, the complaint concerning head coach Guy Bukasa, who we've heard is on a 6-game suspension by CAF, also player Molia and player Kashala. Do you have any updates on that? Is it true that Orlando Pirates has filed this complaint? What have you heard about this from your vantage point?
So what I understand is that there were reports that Pirates have filed a complaint, but what I do understand is that where does that suspension lie? Is it only at national team level, or does it also apply at club level? Because with Guy Bukasa, the suspension was enforced when he was the coach of the DRC and the 20 side at the end of 20 AFCON. So it's going to be interesting to see where that suspension lies. And I think if CAF is very clear with regards to that suspension being applicable at club level, I think that's where Pirates will have a very clear case to fight. Look, already now, but the challenge is now that how will that suspension be proactively raised? Because remember, Sidolwa Lupopo had to play a first round preliminary game. Guy Bukasa was actually coaching at that time. So will then that be applicable to the team that also lost to Sedulwa Lupopo dealing into the Pirates game? So I think how far that particular case stretch will be probably the interesting part. So yeah, if it is the case, it's a massive lapse in administration by Sedulwa Lupopo.
Yeah, and I think also just cementing as well further that the Pirates complaint doesn't only relate to the coach, allegedly also involving 2 players who were either improperly registered for the CAF Champions League or some other sort of suspension from the players. So it's the head coach as well as 2 players. But Khanyiso, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time, and I was still wanting to get your thoughts on, of course, what's going to be happening at the nation's capital tomorrow when Mamelodi Sundowns take on Orlando Pirates. But we'll review it on Monday. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Khanyiso Tshwaku, of course, just speaking all things what you can expect in the world of sport. We touched on the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup, a crucial one for South Africa come Sunday, as they will be hosted by India in the final of the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup. And of course, we know tomorrow that the Springboks will be in action.